Hello and welcome to PBE Set 6 Tournament, Game 2. Enjoy.
She was not having great itemization. Didn't have enough damage output basically to get those resets. She's kind of a thresholdy champion where you want to make sure she kills that unit so she can constantly repeat cast. And so that's where he kind of struggled. And in general, I'm feeling like AP comps are struggling a bit against all these like shields, heals, and these AD carries who tend to run some sort of healing. So it's really hard. Like if you don't burst them in one shot, you're gonna have to burst them again from full health. That kind of is really hard to deal with right now.
All right, well, Soju sells his early misfortune again, not really entertaining the idea of mercenaries. We do know that Soju is not prioritizing that whatsoever, but does have his Arcanist start. And I do think that AP could use a little bit of retooling, I guess, from people's strategies line perspective. And we have seen people try it. Soju has actually made it work, but he needed a Lux 3 to secure the win. And I'm not sure if you can replicate that success every single time. With a tier and a rod, it feels like he's going to have to go for it. And here we go, the 1-4 augment.
Yeah, on guard here is actually such a strong augment if he ends up going deep into challengers. It means that challengers will disarm every unit that they attack the first time. It's so much CC. But in general, I think Soju is going to go for the item grab bag. He might go for the runic shield, who's also really strong. But item grab bag just so much tempo early on. You get a full random item and a reforger that you can just change up later on. We see that he does go with runic shield. So he's committing to these arcanists. It'd be interesting to see if he goes down the Yordle path. Maybe not. Maybe he'll just run it early to get some early upgrades for that board power, and then sell the other Yordles for some econ.
Wow. Okay, so we got three choices. The classic choice of whether or not he wants to play for the now or play for the future, right? The play for the now would be the item grab bag, get the Reforger, accelerate your tempo, and get stats onto the board. The other would be to reaffirm what he's already playing. You have some Arcanist, here's a spell shield that can help you, or rather a shield that can scale deep into the late game. And then here's an opportunity to play a really powerful thing like on guard with challengers and pivot off of what you're doing. But Soji looks at his items and say, I don't know if I can. And I think this is such an interesting dynamic that's starting to formulate from what we're seeing on screen. And I wonder if it's going to work out for him.
Yeah, for sure. And looking at his items, he has Tear and Rod, and so those are definitely pointing towards Arcanist. So you can see why he ended up going down that path. Here we're jumping over to Tex, who's running. Wow, he has 2 Protector, 2 Twin Shot, 2 Academy. This is looking like a very strong early board. Kog'Maw is such a good early game item holder. He can flex into attack speed items with Static Shiv, Rage Blade, or he can go for a full AD itemization. Wow, that Caitlyn threaded the needle there and took out the Kog'Maw. Otherwise, this was a fight that was going Tex's direction. It looks like he's going. He took the Protector augment, which is a little bit surprising. Maybe he's going to go for a Garen reroll, although he leveled to 4. So surprised to see him take that augment and then not go for a Garen reroll though.
Yeah, it's interesting because oh wow, he has this Caitlyn too with the sniper just ready to go if he wants to replace say his one of his units there on the field. Ends up replacing a 1-star Graves instead. But yes, to answer your question here, I think that he has a couple of different levers that he can pull with Protector. So for example, I do think that people aren't playing Scion very much in this in these lobbies, and it could be like a factor of they don't feel like it's really powerful versus some people just haven't had the angle to do it. So I am curious if Tex with something like the Protector emblem pushes him closer to that direction. He has indicated that he doesn't really want to reroll by the fact that he's leveling for tempo. So I am curious as well where he chooses to go with this.
Yeah, and we see here that Soju has slammed that Archangel Staff. I'm a little bit surprised by this. Typically in Arcanist, you want to save the tier for some sort of mana generation, but it looks like, Soju this tournament has been always playing for tempo, so he's been slamming items early, and it looks like Tex here is considering, putting in the Graves. Kog'Maw, if you activate both Sniper and Twin Shot, Kog'Maw is a 3-traded unit. Such a strong early item holder. He has pretty good items that he can slam to as well because he has half of a bow already that can go into like a Rage Blade, Giant Slayer, Last Whisper, depending on what he sees in the lobby.
Yeah, and even though we're in tournament environment and people are playing their playstyles are shifting to accommodate that. Kog'Maw can also still be a carry. You can re-roll him to 3-star, especially if you have a powerful mutant trait, which will vary game to game. There's some really powerful combinations with Kog'Maw in particular that interacts very well with his traits and the specific itemization. Oh, I like that Dasik ran over as if that gold belonged to him. He was like trying to collect it. We've all had those moments like, wait, was that my gold? No, I can't. Or maybe you run over it just to troll your opponents and say, hey, if you don't take this, I'm gonna just make them go ahead and rush over. It's pretty fun.
I love that with Tom Kench, and Tom Kench spits out an item after eating a champion. It's like, is this mine or is this theirs? And we both go and check the little orb and see who can pick it up.
All right, well, Dasik on a 100 HP streak so far. Him solo and K3 Soju are the only players. He has a pretty generic Rage Blade Slam. Caitlyn, again, really has that front line through the phony target dummies, and so has the ability to play just backline synergies, right? His frontline synergies aren't that important, and just takes up this vest to see whether or not he can start fortifying his front line through other ways. Finds another innovator through the Heimerdinger. That's a really, really big deal here for Dasik. Wow.
Yeah, this innovator opener is just so powerful. The Scarab early not only gives you an extra unit with almost 1400 health, depending on your upgrades, because the Scarab scales off of star level of your innovator units, but also he grants damage reduction and the Thornmail type shield, and kind of taunts all the units around him. So by having all of those things in your front line really buys your back line a lot of time. With a unit like Caitlyn who wants long fights, especially with Rageblade, can really make a big difference here. Help Caitlyn get the attack off. Surprisingly, that scrap Trundle rolled a Shroud, which really hurts Dasik here. Caitlyn gets the cast off really late.
That's wild. A Shroud of Stillness, which hit his entire board, and that Trundle dance tells you everything you need to know about how GVA feels about that win. Dasik doesn't even make gold because he wants to hold on to the Warwick pair, which I believe he may have just hit. We'll check back with him a little bit later. Let's go ahead and hop on board with Zologa-Song, who is also streaking right now. As I was, Dasik did not hit, by the way. Just want to clarify that point of confusion.
Yeah, Phony Frontline looks like a very strong early pickup. A lot of players opt in to go for it. I think it gives a lot of board power in stage 2, and a lot of players, when they don't want to commit to a specific comp, they don't want to commit to any kind of direction necessarily, they go for the generic power, and Phony Frontlines gives you 2 target dummies that scale with stage. So it's very, very good for the early game. It falls off definitely in the late game, even though it scales with stage, but still not bad, especially if you're running a minimal frontline comp. It's definitely really good for Dasik, for example, because he's running a innovator comp who has many backline units, not as many frontline units. And so having that Oni frontline is really good for him. We see Zologa-Song here take a loss and end his streak to Dasik, who was still playing that Caitlyn comp.
Wow. Don't look now. We do have one player streaking right now at the top of the lobby, and it is K3 Soju. On the other side, Torek is now the player at a very nice life total, but not a very comfortable one at 69 HP, and it's going to have to find a way to turn around that streak. However, previously, it was very similar to a situation, except it was Dasik who was in the 60s, while Soju and Grand Vice were streaking in game number 1. So let's see how these players choose to reinforce their position or find some ways to buy time so they can swing it later on. Looking at Zologa-Song, he's not making 30 immediately, but now finds the gold in order to do so. Let's see whether or not he chooses to slam a Death Cap here. We have seen some people choose Death Cap Giant Slayer, but the problem is Samir doesn't really scale off that. So then how does he really capitalize off of his components here? Does he slam anything, or does he just kind of hold?
Yeah, he's kind of at an awkward point with components here. It doesn't look like he's set up to go for an AP route. He doesn't have any tiers, doesn't have any sort of mana generation. So I'm curious to see what he ends up building there with rod, sword, armor. I could see maybe like a Guardian Angel slam and go for a defensive item on a late game carry. So we'll have to see. It looks like he's not using those components, just spreading those out. It'd be great to get a scrap in right now to just turn one of those components into a full item. As we hop onto Torek, he's running 3 Chemtech, 2 Bruiser with an Urgot, early Urgot carry. Urgot is not one of these super strong units that you find on stage 3. He definitely needs items to scale, but he scales really well with items because of the way his ult works. He attacks 5 times per second at 1 star, 7 times per second at 2 star. So if you give him that like Death Blade, Runaan's Hurricane, Rage Blade, those types of things, he scales really well and does a ton of damage.
Yeah, I see that Torek is not super committal though with his items. You could have slammed Deathblade, could have slammed anything, and choose to hold instead. Seems like he's a little bit under-itemed in general compared to some of the people in the lobby. So we'll see whether or not Torek can stabilize off this 3-2 roll down. Ends up just kind of playing a little bit of Innovator, some generic front line here. Probably going to complete this Deathblade, it looks like.
It looks like he's running the augment that the innovation will, every time the innovation dies, as long as one innovator is alive, the innovation will revive and heal itself slowly over time. This is actually one of my favorite. It's so much fun to play with. You see there the innovation, the little scarab is healing back up. And so it's about keeping your innovators safe in the backline just to have as much frontline tank as possible. This is super fun augment to play around and really strong with innovators. It helps buy a lot of time for your backline, and sometimes you have to kill the innovation bear when you hit innovator 5. It spawns a bear. Sometimes you have to kill that bear like 3 times a fight if you have enough protection, and you spread out your backline enough so that they don't just get one shot by a AoE spell.
Some really interesting choices from Turek. I can justify a world for all 3 of these. If he wants a socialite hex, he knows where it is. It's front center. Oh, that's a little bit tricky. So it's probably not going to be that. Could choose to have the bruiser heart, so that way he can have an extra bruiser on the board and a bunch of HP, which scales his Chemtex. The other option was weak spot, and weak spot wouldn't be bad whatsoever with his AD focused items and composition. But again, I do have to wonder how much is it worth greeting your items and not slamming something like Deathblade. And yes, it's not the most optimal thing, but at this point, Torek is bleeding so much HP that I deeply, deeply worry about his capacity to be able to turn things around because the gap is only widening.
Yeah, for sure. I'm personally extremely surprised also that he's not slamming the Deathblade here. Just something, even if he drops the Urgot to play, 3 innovators, having that Deathblade would be really strong on an Ezreal too, who scales well with attack speed. Looks like he might just be giving up his first augment. We've seen that some players do that in this tournament so far. Just not worth it because of the units that they've hit or the items that they have. And interesting enough, best Sato JP is running innovators as well with that innovator bear. When the bear casts, grants all your units, you see those lightning on their hands, 30, 80, and AP, which is really strong, especially with Seraphine buffing your team's attack speed. Dude, they scale really well together. Your units will be hitting pretty hard and pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's right. Torek now down below 40 health, but does not get a Radiant Blessing. That's a different set.
Sad.
And a Jhin. Okay. So Jhin does have a lot of work that we can do here. Although, again, the combination of items from Torek, you have to wonder whether or not he is going to be able to get this done. You have Grand Vice streaking right now in first place, and Best Sato also streaking as well. A little bit of inventory check. Let's go ahead and check in with Sato, who had the Exiles and that Chemtech heart, but not utilizing the Exile buff positioning-wise. In fact, he has 0 Exile buffs. He somehow found a way to buddy up everybody on his board. Is he going to keep doing that, or is he going to... Is it just a misdirection, Maybe he just does it like for 1 or 2 rounds and then wins anyways.
Yeah, he must have watched Soju's VOD and been like, this is how you win games. You don't use your exile buff. It's a flex on the rest of the lobby. It looks like he's spreading out his units now, so he's using it. Wonder if he notices that his bear is not getting the exile buff here, because this does work for units that aren't champions. And so his bear has about almost 3,000 health at this point with the number of star levels he has on his board. So that's a lot of exile shield not getting value. Which is surprising because that's a lot of value there that he's missing out on.
Yeah, it's definitely questionable given that you want your front line to generally have the shields. If you compare it, like if you have to choose only one, the front line or the back line to get these big shields, you want your front line to have it because they are the ones who stall for time for your back line. And as a result, you can make an argument that, yes, Sato won, but he could have maybe even won by more units and applied more pressure to Solo Gosong. So we'll see. But overall, Sato's macro game plan seems to be in a good spot. Chemtech Innovator, very, very solid. And it seems like, for the most part, Sato has a pretty good idea of what he wants to be doing this game.
Yeah, looking at his optimization, he has the Runaan's, he has the Last Whisper. he has picking up a bunch of Chemtech units. It looks like he's going to be going towards that Urgot with a Bruiser Chemtech frontline. Oh wow, here he hits the Mundo too. That's huge on stage 3-6. He's going to be really, really strong. The Urgot is so good with the Last Whisper and the Runettes together because he's been trading 2 units. Urgot kind of needs to go front to back most of the time unless you have really good positioning with this Last Whisper. And so the Last Whisper is going to be, or with this Runettes Hurricane, I'm sorry. The Last Whisper is going to be doing a lot of work. And you see here, Mundo 2, when he finishes his cast, so he injects medicine into himself, heals for about 5 seconds, and then he explodes for a percentage of his current health. And you see here that in the damage charts that he did a bunch of magic damage to the units within 2 hex radius. He's still not really using the exile hex here, or exile augment here. I think he realizes now, and he's moving his units apart. Giving the Mundo the socialite buff is going to be really good because the Mundo, at this stage in the game, it's really, really hard to burst him down through that self-sustain. And so that 25% max health damage, our current health damage, is going to deal a lot of damage.
All right, well, taking a look at how the rest of the lobby is shaking up. That was a good breakdown here. Ken, 4 components for Sato, so you can utilize his sword to add even more damage amplification for his AD-based composition as he inevitably waits for Urgot. He is streaking, and the alone player to do that. So go ahead and have him board with Chi2. Again, we've been seeing tons of Urgot, but his itemization kind of implies that he might even get off the Urgot the moment he finds something even better. Let's say a challenger. Oh, never mind. He finds Urgot too. So Urgot with Rageblade, Hand of Justice, definitely feels like it's lower DPS than some of the builds that we've been seeing here. But how much is it impacted by, Ken, in your opinion, when you see itemization like this on Urgot compared to traditional?
Yeah, so Urgot is interesting in that he scales similarly to Jhin. He scales off of attack speed as well to give him AD and deal more damage because he attacks for a set amount of attacks every ult. Still though, definitely would want more damage output rather than just like scaling up with Rageblade. Like you see here, he's definitely still dealing a lot of damage because it's a stage 4 Urgot 2. But I wonder how well he's going to be doing, in stage 5 when everyone starts hitting their 4-cost 2-star carries, and they have much stronger itemization than what he has here on his Urgot. Looks like he's right-clicking the Urgot, thinking about like, is this, gonna sustain me throughout the end game? Maybe if he finds like a final item that gives him some AD, some crit, or Giant Slayer maybe, something that gives him some sort of damage multiplier on top of this attack speed multiplier that he has now, might be good for him.
It's interesting because based off his items that he has on his bench, he actually has a couple of different ways that he can go about it as well. He can, of course, say play another Hand of Justice, give a little bit more damage boost to him, but ultimately kind of do exactly what he's doing right now. The other is that he could just be using this as his temporary board, and then for level 8, try to transition to another carry, maybe even legendary one. We saw, Jace, for example, do something that could be really powerful with it. So I think Chi2 is just keeping himself quite agnostic. He does eliminate a player. It looks like Torek is the first player out at 4-2. That was so unexpected.
Yeah, Torek out early, didn't use his items to save himself some health in stage 3, ended up taking way too much damage, and in stage 4 wasn't able to stabilize, unfortunately, and facing Sato, who had such a strong early hit in that Urgot 2, and got punished for it, unfortunately. As we hop over to Grand Vice 8 here, one of the most flexible players, playing 5 Bruiser, he has the Jinx, so he has 2 Sister, and a really strong Vi right here with that Thieves Gloves roll. Vi does a ton of magic damage, is relatively tanky, and casts relatively often. And with Sister, she's hitting for, instead of 2 hexes, she's hitting 4 hexes, as you see here. That big burst coming out from Vi, and that damage able to using the Hextech Gunblade able to heal the rest of the team as well.
That's right.
One thing I wanted to call out too is as you were talking about Chi2's itemization here, he has the option to slam the Runettes Hurricane here, which now gives 15 AD, which is not too bad for Urgot, especially because he attacks so often he can proc it. But he's probably remaining flexible. He's healthy. He has a decent amount of gold, so as you said, like he might be going for a 5-cost carry.
Might be going for 5 costs. We know that people really favor frontline socialite hexes by having challengers in those spots as well. Maybe some Fiora and Yone action. We'll have to find out as we take a look at GV8's opponents and what they're picking up here. I think GV is very clearly just on the transition to the Jinx game plan, has the ability for Giant Slayer Hodge. I think he picked up that tier with the Yone. That's not going to be any kind of transition, just reinforcing what he already has on the board. He does have to find a replacement for this Kog'Maw. It eventually finds a way to... Oh, actually he has 3 twin shot right now, so we can actually sub it out as 1-1. It's just going to play the Echo here because it's a 2-star unit and he wants to have quality units on the board at the moment. Let's go ahead and hop on board with Soju, who has... Oh my gosh. He has 3-star Yordles? What am I watching?
So he, I guess, must have hit a bunch of Yordles early. I can't imagine this was his game plan from the beginning, but that's what makes it so exciting because, you know, he saw himself get a bunch of Lulus, probably was like, okay, well, I guess I'm keeping this Lulu in for the rest of the game. And so now he has almost a 3-star Vex. 3-star Vex is so tanky, such a good front line. And he also almost has a 3-star Twisted Fate. So he's not playing for Lux, he's playing for TF. Looks like, you know, when he committed in stage 1 for that Runic Shield, that grants all of the Arcanists 400% of their AP as a shield with unlimited duration. He saw that was going to be good, so he just went down that path. Wonder what he's going to take here. Wow. Look at these choices. Prismatic, tier 3.
Goes for the golden ticket where he gets an opportunity to reroll every single turn. End up hitting what he's looking for here. Finds a couple more opportunities to pick up Arcanist, but Soju just goes for the golden ticket instead of saying go for the Socialite Spotlight, which he knows is front center. It's not going to be that important to him to have it on, say, Vex. So Soju's in a spot where he's clearly not keeping things like the 6 Yordles. He's not going for the Yordle Lord and Vhagar. What is he going to do instead here? I think from now, Soju just has to readjust his expectations. First, it almost feels certainly off the table. He's going to be thinking right now very deeply about how he wants to try and play for a top 4 here.
Yeah, it looks like he slams the item here with exactly that in mind. You know, he's going to go for a top 4. He rolled down at 7, didn't hit his units, and so he's kind of in a really rough spot. He did take golden ticket, really fun augment, kind of exciting sometimes because every time you reroll, you have a 40% chance to get another reroll, but those can proc off of each other. So sometimes you can get like a 5 or 6 rolls for free, and that's where kind of the excitement of the augment comes in, and also just the value of it. Especially in the late game when you're kind of just like rolling down every single turn, you can get a lot of rolls in a row. And I think that Soju took it thinking, you know, I need to utilize this to hit my 3-star TF, hit 3-star Vex. That's my top 4 condition here. I'm not going to 8, and so that's the augment that he thought would give him the highest chance of hitting top 4.
Let's go ahead and check out Solo Gasang, who does have the Kaisa front center with the double Giant Slayer and Death Cap. It's a lot of AP that's going to be heading her way, assuming people are hit that 1600 HP threshold, which is a lot easier to hit these days than you expect. Does feel like it's going to be very interesting to see if he can 2-star this board, and if he doesn't, then how does his 1-star board deal? He does have 2-star Janna, 2-star Zac. It does feel like right now Solo is just hoping that it's enough. Maybe the phony front line can do enough to protect that Kaisa. I do worry about initial burst. If say that Jin, for example, immediately double crits and all of a sudden you see that that Kaisa drop very quickly, it'd be a sad day for Solo.
Yeah, Kaisa as a frontliner is a little bit risky, but the good thing is that she's 50 mana to cast, which means that she can quickly dash away to the backline. If you put her in the front line, she'll dash away from all enemy units. She's pretty smart with just like set 5.5 Tristana logic. So similar to that. So like she'll jump away, as you see here, to the backline and then get a big cast off. Unfortunately for Soju, he does hit, but he's facing a double Giant Slayer Kaisa, who deals a ton of damage to the Twisted Fate and the front line and takes them out. Another exciting thing to call out is we saw Besato JP hit Innovator Soul, which grants +2 innovators. So he was running the Dragon on his board with 7 innovators. Very exciting.
All right. Well, he still is. We're gonna hop on board, Sato. We're gonna hop on board with the fact that he has his bear in the socialite spot. I like that as well. Rolling down to see if he can find any 2-star for his innovators, holding a bunch of them on his bench at the moment. see if he can transition cleanly as well. I do worry about the Fiora being the main item holder since she doesn't really benefit from anything right now. There's no enforcer, there's no challenger. But maybe this is still just good enough just because you have a 2-star Fiora with items.
Yeah, he's getting the team buffs from Seraphine, who grants attack speed to the units that wave passes through, and then the bear grants AD and AP, which is both like Fiora scales really well off of both of those because she deals a portion of magic damage, a portion of AD. It's not going to be enough in this fight. Also, sad to see that he dropped the dragon in favor of other traits, but you know, I think he sees what his win condition is. He needs that AD and AP. Doesn't think that running Ezreal and Zillion is worth it for the dragon. But the dragon does grant 50% critical strike chance and 50% critical strike damage to the entire team, which is really powerful. But sees that the AD and AP and like stronger units in general is more worth it. That's what he's thinking is more worth it for him here.
Yeah, very much so. And at this point, maybe just trying to bleed out a little bit less quickly than the other people. Chitu, Soju, and Tex all just one hit away, basically at the same HP, and it comes down to how many champions they can eliminate. And it looks like Sato gets the Ghost going up against a Scion build based off the Imperial and the Colossus, and Scion Smash is so powerful. Whose board is this?
Wow, I'm. This is such a cool board. Just IE JG Hodge on Scion. This unit is so hard to kill because he's tanky. He deals a lot of damage, and if you can't burst him in time, he'll ult half of your team, heal back to full, and just repeat that over and over. And so this Scion build is definitely really hard to pull off, but really, really strong when it comes together.
Wow.
We see Soju unfortunately goes out in 7th. He didn't hit his, I don't think he hit his Vex, and then we see Chitu go out in 6th. These two players got eliminated on stage 5 before they were able to get items off of the carousel.
Yeah, but you know, the other story of it is that we have 2 streakers, Dasic having the 5 innovator, looking good, having Jin 2, very, very nice. And then from Texas' perspective, he's playing the Scion build and he's stabilized at 1 HP. That was Texas' board that we saw Sato go up against, and he has a Galio 2 as well. I mean, Tex looks like definitely a person that can make the top 4. Can he go beyond that? But he's also at 1 HP. He's on the thinnest of margins.
Yeah, looking at Tex, you know, another fight against Tex's Ghost. Tex here looking really strong, hoping to see a comeback story here. 1 HP comeback with such a strong board, that would be really exciting. He also has a Samiran backline with decent items, but unfortunately for him, not good enough to beat this Jin board. If he ends up facing Dasic's board, the other streaker in this lobby, he might struggle a bit. Oh, and Tex goes out. Looks like he might have lost to Grand Vice or Slogasang, 2 other really healthy players in this lobby.
I mean, Dasic does have Giant Slayer, so he was good against these big Colossus boards, and Tex takes a 5th place. A little disappointing. I think people were expecting the Scion to do a lot better. It seems to be doing pretty good in solo queue at the moment, but we'll see how Dasic ends up being able to cement his lead here. He has 50 gold, heavily implying that he's going to be leaning towards either re-rolling for Jin and trying to get a Jin 3-star, or going for that level 9, a good switch at the last second, knowing that there's Zephyr chasing on his Jin. Instead, he's going to be on Janna, which is totally fine because when she casts his Monsoon, is going to push back the front line, giving more time for Jace, clumping everything for his sniper shots. And that is going to be a curtain call indeed for GV8, going down to below 40 life, as Besato does end up taking the 4th place. So now let's go ahead and up on board Grand Vice 8 and check in on see what he can pick up. Finally, I think he's had that Hodge opportunity since stage 4 when we first last checked in with him, choosing to complete that Hodge and have that Jinx be the transition hold.
Yeah, it looks like he's rolling down every turn right now, trying to hit that second Jinx. He has a Nikos on the bench, hoping to build a really strong Jinx here. I really like the Celestial Blessing pickup as his Prismatic Tier 3 augment. Jinx kind of needs some sort of healing when she goes in. She gets really risky, pops in. This build is completely centered around Jinx, and so he really needs the Jinx to stay alive. And so Looks like he picks up another Urgot 2 on his bench. He's considering
Oh.
2 win conditions here. Either he can play Jinx or he can find that Urgot 3, transition the items over. He has a magnetic remover on his bench. So he can, if he ends up hitting
Oh.
another Urgot, he can actually play for an Urgot 3. He's also feeding the Kench here, unbenching the Kench, letting the Kench eat some AP to help digest the units. I really like feeding Kench AP because if he eats units and spits them out as gold, he's basically paying for himself. And he also takes out units for 3 seconds in a fight, deals with a lot of damage. GVA is relatively healthy, maybe has about 1 to 2 lives left. So he is still looking to be in a decent spot. Surprisingly, still trying to scale up his Ham Kench here. And still
Yes.
looking for that Urgot 3 or Jinx 2. Hopefully he can hit something on this round.
Oh, not the 4-cost Kempik that he was looking for, but definitely wants that Mundo 2. Is he going to sell something? He's going to Nico his Tom Kench and just give up on the Urgot Dream, recognizing that this might be his last round and he's playing for second. At the very last second swap, you can see he was deep in thought, rationalizing to himself, just couldn't really get it done. And also, even if he had Urgot 3, doesn't even have the items, he would have to sell his Jinx in order to do that, or sell his Vi, things I just want to do. We'll see whether or not it's enough to survive for a top 2 here. He does have the HP lead, so Solo Gasong is going up against Daysik, which means that with top 2 should be very likely if he can just survive this fight, and it looks like he's going to be able to do just that. Solo takes a loss with only a 1-star Kaisa, not able to get it done. Grand Vice has second guaranteed. And what is he going to do to be able to try to move into first place? Because we know Daysik is very powerful right now. And I love the fact that he's still staying on these innovators and just has a very solid amount of frontline backline with utilities. Frontline, as you can see, is the target dummies plus the innovation and all of the different things that support it. He's got 4 clockwork as well to add an incredible amount of attack speed so that all of his utility and damage can really start to rack up.
I really like this build here, just looking at the trait structure of Daysik. Of these prismatic augments, they really add an interesting structure to the traits here. You see that he has a Janna with attack speed items, 4 clockwork. So really giving himself a lot of casts with this Janna, with a Rabadon's death cap as well, just full healing the team every time she casts. Let's see if she can get a second cast here. It doesn't even matter. This Jhin does so much damage, just melting the entire team. This Giant Slayer, i.e. Last Whisper build is just so powerful.
Oh, and that's going to do it. EU.
And that's the end of game 2. Hope you enjoyed it.